No team in the NFL has had more poor injury luck than the Detroit Lions. Dating back all the way to the preseason and following them through their most recent contest against Jacksonville, the Lions have seemingly lost an impactful player in just about every single week. And today we are going to talk about it, going back all the way to the preseason, talking about all the players that started the season on injury reserve, and go all the way through to this most recent week in Jacksonville, where the Detroit Lions lost yet another starter and team captain in Alex Anzalone. So, with that being said, let's go in and take a look at the injury reports, take a look at the injury updates, but also take a look at the potential players that could be returning for the Detroit Lions in a playoff run. Now, starting off with the players that were on injury reserve prior to the season even kicking off. John Kaminsky tore his MCL before training camp was underway. He was an unfortunate injury casualty to OTAs, and he was not ever going to be a part of this 2024 season. Now, there was speculation that had the Detroit Lions made the playoffs in 2024, that John Kaminsky could potentially return in January. Now, this is an optimistic estimation. There isn't necessarily a lot of news saying that he will return, but there is a possibility, right? That would be about 6 to 7 months removed from the injury, depending on when exactly it was suffered. And there is a potential for John Kaminsky to return at some point throughout the playoffs, but it doesn't seem as though it is something the Detroit Lions are relying. Broderick Martin was placed on injury reserve right after the preseason with a knee injury. Emmanuel Mosley was placed on the injury reserve after tearing his pectoral throughout training camp. Ifeatu Melifonwu did make it to the NFL season, but was placed on injury reserve before ever playing a game with an Achilles injury. And then, of course, Michael Badgley ended up tearing his Achilles very early on in the offseason process and was never in the cards to play this season either. Now, the injury luck unfortunately did not stop there, as throughout the NFL season, the Detroit Lions have lost a number of starters, including star pass rusher Aiden Hutchinson, edge rusher number 2 Marcus Davenport, interior defensive line veteran Kyle Pico, team captain, team leader, and linebacker Derek Barnes, as well as special teams All-Pro Jalen Reeves-Maybin. They've lost several captains. They've lost several leaders. They've lost a lot of starters on the defensive side of the ball. And unfortunately, they lost one more this past Sunday as Alex Anzalone has gone down with a broken forearm. It is a 6 to 8 week recovery time, and it will leave Alex Anzalone out for the remainder of the 2024 regular season. Now, through 9 games this season, Anzalone has been fantastic. With 56 tackles, 7 TFLs, 1 sack, and 4 passes defended, Alex Anzalone has been the Lions' captain on defense. He's been the heart and soul of this team, and he is going to be a player that is going to be very, very difficult to replace. As I mentioned, defensive captain, defensive leader, heart and soul of the roster. But not only that, not only is he an emotional leader, not only is he a leader in the locker room, he's a very efficient player on the defense, right? Third on the team in tackles, first on the team in tackles for loss, and fifth on the team in passes defended. He is a sideline to sideline linebacker with great speed, great instincts, great at getting into the backfield, and he is a playmaker for this Detroit Lions defense. It doesn't always show up in the stat sheet. He doesn't always put up super big, super flashy numbers, but Alex Anzalone is the centerpiece of this defense, especially after Alex Anzalone was gone. He's the communicator. He's the guy that gets everybody lined up. Again, he is the leader of that defense, and without that leader, the Detroit Lions will be struggling on defense from here on out. Now, with it being a 6 to 8 week injury and there being 7 weeks left in the NFL regular season, that means that Alex Anzalone will likely make his return to the NFL playoffs. He will likely play for the Detroit Lions in their first playoff game, whether that be on the home or on the road. So it's not a season-ending injury in the fact that he won't play again this year for the Lions, but it is going to be a pretty significant injury over the next 2 months to replace the Detroit Lions' number 1 linebacker. The Detroit Lions depth in the meantime, Jack Campbell, Malcolm Rodriguez, Trevor Nowaske, and Ben Neiman are your linebackers, right? The depth is starting to look quite a bit thinner than it was before. And for a team that entered the season with Alex Anzalone, Derek Barnes, Malcolm Rodriguez, Jack Campbell, and Jalen Reeves-Maybin as your top 5 linebackers in one of the deepest linebacking rooms in the NFL, They are now down to Jack Campbell and Malcolm Rodriguez, two players that were projected to be okay, right? Jack Campbell was expected to start. Malcolm Rodriguez was expected to be a backup. And while he's always been a good football player when he's had the time on the field, there's a reason he was a backup. It's because Derek Barnes outperformed him. It's because Jack Campbell and Alex Anzalone were outperforming him. And even though I do think that Rodriguez is a quality linebacker, it is a depth option that the Detroit Lions didn't want to have to rely on. Trevor Nowaske was a waiver wire pickup after week 4 of the NFL season. And even though he's been quite good, coming away with a couple of sacks, coming away with an interception, and actually playing quite well at the position, it is still a depth linebacker that was not even on the roster to start the season, but a player that the Detroit Lions do really like. And then, of course, Ben Neiman, a player that was elevated from the practice squad, was brought back to this roster after the injuries had arisen. He had a couple of nice plays against Jacksonville, but again, not the linebackers you thought you'd have to start the season. You're now down 3 of your top 5 linebackers, 2 of which were projected starters, and most of them will not be back until the end of the NFL season if they return at all. Going forward through the rest of the NFL season, the Lions' schedule is still pretty tough. They travel on the road to Indianapolis, who is a pretty good team, and even though their record might be a losing one or right around 500, a lot of their losses have been within 3 to 4 points. A lot of their losses have been close, and many of them have come at the hands of 1 or 2 mistakes that, if cleaned up, could see the Colts potentially being one of the better teams in the AFC. They play the Bears twice, who at the moment don't have a very good record, but their defense is still quite good. And the Lions do always struggle to play at Soldier Field, so that could potentially be a loss, especially without Alex Anzalone. They have Green Bay on Thursday Night Football. They are at home, but Green Bay is still a very good team. Anzalone was instrumental in that victory just a couple weeks ago in Lambeau, and without their team captain, that might be a loss now that would have otherwise been a victory. They host Buffalo in week 15. They go to Soldier Field in week 16. They go to San Francisco in week 17 versus a 49ers team that is still very talented. And then, of course, in week 18, you welcome back Minnesota, who is only a game and a half behind you in the division. And if they take the victory, could potentially jump you for the number 1 seed in the conference, as well as the number 1 seed in the division if it does come down to a week 18 matchup. This is a tough schedule. The back half of this schedule features the Vikings, who were a playoff team, the 49ers, who could be a playoff team, the Bills, who are a playoff team, the Green Bay Packers, who are a playoff team, and if things turn around, potentially the Colts could sneak in as a wild card spot. The only real team that I don't think has a great chance is the Chicago Bears. And even then, they travel to Soldier Field in December, where the elements very well could be the difference maker between a Lions victory and a Lions defeat. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. There are a couple of positives to take away, and there are a couple of positives to take a look at as the Detroit Lions move forward. Coming back in a couple of weeks, if not as early as this week, is Ifeatu Melifonwu, Emmanuel Moseley, and Broderick Martin. All of them have been within their practice window for at least the previous 2 weeks, meaning if they are not activated this Sunday, they will be placed on injury reserve for the remainder of the season. Emmanuel Moseley and Broderick Martin are players that have been fully go at practice over the last week or so, with Ifeatu Melifonwu being limited in practice, but still being around and still being a part of the team activities, walkthroughs, practices, and everything like that. He's just taking a little bit of extra time to work off to the side with the trainers and has been limited throughout practices, but still very much a participant. Again, all 3 of them have been in their practice windows, and if they are not activated by Sunday, they will not be active for the remainder of the NFL season. And those players aren't the only ones that could potentially come back. As the Detroit Lions approach the playoffs in 2024, Kyle Pico could potentially return. He tore his pectoral in week 6. He is maybe out for the remainder of the season. However, just based off of the injury that was suffered by Emmanuel Moseley, which was also a pectoral injury, could potentially come back, right? Emmanuel Mosley tore his pectoral at some point during training camp, could potentially return by week 12. A player that tore his pectoral in week 4 could potentially return for the playoffs. It is a potential long shot, but not out of the realm of possibility. We've talked about Ifeatu Melifonwu, Emmanuel Mosley, and Broderick Barton potentially returning as early as this week. Alex Anzalone returns potentially for the wild card round, as John Kaminsky potentially returns at some point in January as well, whether that be in the first couple of weeks or in the latter half of the month, as the Detroit Lions hopefully approach a Super Bowl competition. So, with that being said, the Lions are struggling right now. They're going through a lot of injury issues, right? Their team captains of Alex Anzalone and Aiden Hutchinson, another team leader in Derek Barnes is out. Team captain in Jalen Reeves-Maybin is out. They are missing a lot of talent. They are missing a lot of leadership, and they are going to be missing quite a few of their players down the stretch. But I do still think that they have a chance to win the conference, win the division, and be the 1 seed in the NFC. And if they can do that in the back half of this season with the schedule that they have, and then they welcome back 3, 4, 5 quality players on the defense, I think this team can win a Super Bowl. I still think even without Aiden Hutchinson, I still think even without Alex Anzalone, this is a Super Bowl caliber roster. Jack Campbell and Malcolm Rodriguez are still very high quality linebackers, as well as Trevor Nowaske, who has been pretty good at Sam linebacker for the Lions over the last few weeks. This is still a Super Bowl caliber roster, and as we approach the playoffs, they will get healthy. They will add players and add talent back to this roster. And I do think come playoff time, they will be geared up healthier than they are right now, and they will be vying for a Super Bowl championship. With that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know down in the comments below your concerns about the injury reports, your concerns about the ever-growing injury and injury reserve list. I'd be curious to hear your guys' opinions and if you think this team ceiling is starting to get capped or whether you think they are still a true contender. I'd be curious to hear your guys' opinions in the comments down below. So please go down below and leave those comments. With that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.